Let's wait for the YouTube to wake up. Let's wait for the YouTube to wake up. Once the YouTube's awake, we know we're live. And there it comes. And there it comes. Beautiful, beautiful. Here we go. Oh, man. Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Get Your News On with Ron. I am not in Miami right now about to do a show. That's not where I am. Instead, I'm at home, just like so many other creative folks. A lot of your musician friends, they're at home instead of at the show that they were going to have tonight. Same with a bunch of my comedian friends. Everybody, it's crazy out there. But I have a very special guest today. Kevin Ronca is with me. Now, Kevin is a filmmaker who did The Revolution Televised. He's got a new film out called Nightcrawlers, which we're going to talk about because a lot's been going on with that. But where we're going to start today, Kevin, you were in China when the coronavirus outbreak happened there.
I was in Guangzhou. I was in the second most infected region. I was not in Wuhan, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just start at the beginning, man. So walk me through it. I mean, because at this point, information like that hadn't even really hit the States yet. Like, we didn't know about anything happening. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's this thing going on in China. So unpack it for me from where you were at. You were in China. This outbreak happens. How did that unfold?
Let me give you a background. So my wife's Chinese, and once a year we make a trip to see her family. So this is planned like 9 months ahead of time. Like, we wait for it all year, this 1 month. Last year, the first time I went. So this is a huge deal to us to go out there. And I brought my camcorder. It's like an old VHS camcorder. And I thought, I'm going to shoot a nice little doc about my vacation and also catch my wife with her family. So we kind of have like a home movie of, this nice reunion. And when we got there, within a couple of days, there was like rumblings because there's this misconception by Westerners and almost condescending that they know more about what's going on in China than Chinese people, and that they're somehow less informed than us because the government runs their media, even though corporations run ours. So, take that for what you will. But a lot of people over there have VPNs and stuff like that, and we're watching CNN, and also just, we're hearing about this virus before it had actually been announced in China. So I had a little bit of information when I first got there, but it wasn't considered a huge deal. So people are getting a little sick. But here's the fascinating thing, and if you know China and you know the Eastern perspective, there is a dedication to symbolism and mathematics, and these things are very much built into their spiritual culture. So this is kind of an interesting thing I'll mention, and it ties into the documentary. But so I get there, and usually it's the Chinese New Year, right? I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but with them, the zodiacs run yearly. So you have your monthly zodiacs, but you have more like every year is a different zodiac year. So you have the year of the pig, the year of the rat, the year of the cow. So every time you go to Chinese New Year, or whatever that symbol that year is. This is important because this part was pretty fascinating. When I first got there, my father-in-law had said that the grandparents were relatively nervous. And these are people who lived under Mao Zedong. I mean, they've seen a lot in China. And I asked why they were nervous, and they said because China, a lot of the older people in China believe in a sort of superstition of, I don't even want to say superstition because I think that's condescending too. Let's just say a perspective that 5 cycles of the zodiac. So just bear with me now. So you do, you go through your 12 months, right? You do, say 12 years straight, you do one of each of the zodiacs. That's one cycle, right? So China believes in 5 seasons. They have, winter, autumn, spring, summer, and late summer. And each one is a different element. And that is the cycle of life and death, build and destroy. Starts with earth, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. This is important because so they were telling me that, you have the 12 years of the zodiac, but then you have 5 cycles. And every time that happened, it was 60 years, right? 5 times 12. So this everything is every 60 years, something devastating happened to China. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know about that. But they're like, well, 1840 was the Opium War, which almost destroyed China. 1900, there was an invasion and they lost a lot of their territory. 1960 was the Mao Zedong Massacre, one of the major massacres he did. And then 2020 would now be the next big event. So when they told me this before the virus, I'm just like, okay.
Wow, no kidding, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So they didn't want to go on vacation, and they're like, something's going to come. And then it was like maybe 4 days later, when shit like started getting kind of real, you know, we started here. They made an announcement in China. But you know, and I'll let you ask more questions. But what was interesting to me was
well, how are they feeling now? Are they like, told you so?
Yeah,
Told you.
There's a lot of that.
Why didn't you listen? It's math. We're not messing around here. It was 60. You could have just came next year. No big deal.
Of all the times I had to be there, right? Like it's 2020, you know. The thing is too, China too, I think I was getting a lot of Westerners when this was unfolding kind of messaging me. And initially it was like checking up on me, but then it became almost lecturing me. And I'm like, as usual, it really puts in perspective, like the Westerners often wanting to tell you, oh, you're in China, you don't know what's really going on. It's like, yeah, no, I'm in China. I do know what's really going on. And a lot of people here are not these sort of dim-witted, like the same way we talk about North Korea, like they don't know anything. It's just not true. Like they're very aware. They just don't say in public what they think sometimes of their government. You know, they don't go out and trash their government, but they are free-thinking human beings. You know what I mean? Like the idea that they are like incapable of understanding what authoritarianism can sometimes be is crazy. But this is what I'm going to say about the situation before we kind of get into like other elements of it. We hear a lot in this country about, you know, places like Russia, places like China, governments that need to be, you know, this communist rule and authoritarian, we need to stop it. I will say there's a flip side to everything. And maybe this is what Bernie was touching on with Castor. The flip side to this kind of a rule is when something like this goes down, the president can go like this and decide exactly what's going to happen immediately. And every single region of China is going to follow it. So he decides like that. Everywhere you go now, you're going to be scanned for your temperature everywhere. You're no longer allowed to visit certain buildings unless you're a blood relative. Like that kind of shutdown happened so quickly that within 2 days, the entire country of 1.3 billion people were effectively moving in unison. And now if you go to the United States, something like this happens and we have about, you know, because it is great to have a democratic system, but then the swing side to that is you have about 300 politicians, many greedy, many with their own benefits, just having this partisan argument before anything's going to get done. And who knows when it'll get done. It will take forever to pass anything. And I think that is at times scary. I mean, yeah, they just passed you know, they are moving bills through, but there's just so much bickering and things have gotten in this climate so intense that even Corona has become a weaponized political thing. And so, you know, that is the flip side of what you hear about China. And then you have the socialized medicine. So, you know, they're building hospitals. They were, you know, everything was happening very quickly. But then again, you have to look at the other side of that, which was once Corona struck, everybody went to the fucking hospital. Everybody. So you had insane lines in a 1.3 billion person country. Like masks were gone in 10 seconds. So there's a flip side to everything, I think. And I wish Westerners kind of took that perspective more, you know, before you condemn China, before you, you know, you need to understand, like, it's like an entirely different ecosystem. And people, when I go to China, you know, sure, I have my beliefs about many things and I don't necessarily, you know, push them or repress them, but I kind of think I'm like in somebody else's home and I wouldn't go to someone's home and start, you know, making strong political points. And you know what I mean? Like, if I was a guest. So I think, you know, I hope the Westerners start to, because there was a lot of pointing like, oh, look at China. And I think now it's flipped. Now China's looking at the US like, you know, you guys weren't really ready for it, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, a lot of the reasons we weren't ready wasn't just because like, oh, we you know, we're a democracy in quotes, which it should be in quotes because it's not really a democracy at all. But like, you know, we're a quote democracy. It's also because we have no comprehensive plan for healthcare. We have no comprehensive healthcare system. And we have, you know, no mechanisms in place to handle something like this. I mean, this is one of those things where when you watched Donald Trump speak, the only logical takeaway from that, if you were actually listening to what the guy was saying, was, hey, we're on our own. We're completely on our own. I mean, that's why, like, I mean, even places like the World Health Organization, they're looking at us and they're like, so the United States is pretty much on par with a third world country in the way they responded to this, like, which we are. I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's why
you got to hope in your community.
Yeah, no. And, you know, I was upset about Trump's speech, but I felt like in a way it was like, well, what the hell else is he going to say? We're kind of fucked. You know, it's like, I don't even know what I expect from a person like that anyway. I mean,
well, I think that there were other people in the political sphere that actually had some solutions. I mean, you listen to someone like a Bernie Sanders speak, who was talking about, this is why we need a universal healthcare system. This is why we need to make these tests available. We need to get on top of that. I think if someone like a Bernie Sanders was president, he wouldn't be saying stuff like, oh, let's cut the funding for the CDC and then have them come up with their own tests that goes against the international community. He would just embrace the whole thing. Tulsi Gabbard.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard called for an emergency UBI.
I thought that was very interesting. Very cool.
Totally, and I think right on too. So no, I mean, you did see some other other people in the political arena that had good things to say, that had more solutions to say. Unfortunately, none of them are the president.
Well, let me stress what I should have given a disclaimer. I mentioned I didn't expect much more from Trump.
Right. No. I know.
But I think we've never seen such a. I was just talking to someone the other day. I mean, we were looking for this moment where Bernie really needed to turn things around. And this ties to this because I'm like, what possible momentum injection can you get? I mean, the primary is just coming too quick. There's no debate. There's one debate. I mean, what can really be done? And then Corona comes, and it's not in any way happy about that. But you're like, whoa, this is an event that really is going to show who should be the president. I mean, this is something that every left or right is affected equally, just like things like famine and these other issues. I mean, people from all spectrums are affected. And who's going to step up and show us like who could deal with a situation like this? And the only way to see that is for a situation like that to happen. We're right in the thick of a pandemic potentially. And it's like we have one presidential contender with a phenomenal healthcare plan that would have fixed this. We have one with a horrible healthcare plan. We have one with like no healthcare plan. So, I think for Bernie, you'd never want something like this to happen, but this could be a moment to take the leadership in a one-on-one debate with no jeering Michael Bloomberg crowd there, no audience to give you trick questions, and you could really just hammer Joe Biden on like, what are you going to do in the coronavirus? And I think you could actually see a massive momentum shift if he bludgeons, hate to say that phrasing, but if he was a bludgeon, Joe Biden in a debate with a corona question or something. I actually think, look, if Howie Dean could scream like a moron and completely destroy his presidential ambitions. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I watched it like 10 times because I forgot about it. It's so hilarious.
Yeah. There's still time for a momentum shift.
Yeah.
And that's why when people are saying it's over, like, no, it's not over. There's still time for momentum shift. They haven't even awarded all the delegates yet, which is a whole, different can of worms with election integrity. And of course, we had a mess here in California. And it's interesting. All the messes that have happened are in places where Bernie would presumably do very well. So odd. What a weird coincidence that all the places that had issues with the machines, issues with the lines, these were all places that had young people and people of color and all these different groups that usually turn out very high for a Bernie Sanders. Those were all the problems. Interesting. But yeah, I think tomorrow's going to be huge. And he's got to really, it was a big punch in the gut. And I've said this on a couple different platforms now. It was a big punch in the gut when he said publicly he thinks Joe Biden could win. That was a huge misstep by him. That was, first of all, I don't believe for 1 second it's true. I don't think Joe Biden could beat Trump in his wildest dreams. Joe Biden will get crushed. And I don't know how Bernie doesn't realize that. I think he's just saying that to keep face. But, like when you say that, it's like, who does that? Who does that in a political campaign? Like that'd be like, hey, coach, I really want you to start me a quarterback. I think so-and-so would do just as good a job. Yeah. We'll still beat the opponent. If you start so-and-so, they'll still do just as good. But maybe start me. I don't know. But that was a huge misstep. And now he's really gotta come back from that. Like, I would love to see him go out there and like the whole my friend Joe thing is frustrating. But what I would love to see, I'd love to see him go out there and just be like, so Joe Biden, you're my friend. And you know what friends do at times? Friends have interventions when it's necessary. So consider this yours. You are not capable of beating Trump. You are not, I thought you could beat Trump. And I think maybe 4 years ago you could have. But now you can't. And you have proven that in leaps and bounds over the past couple of weeks, especially when there's a pandemic going on and you're babbling about rivers in Delaware and your live stream has to get cut after 4 minutes. You don't have the acumen. You don't have the acumen to take on Donald Trump. And if you are the nominee, we are going to get 4 more years of Trump. So as your friend, I'm having an intervention, something that your family apparently doesn't love you enough to do. And I'm telling you, you got to step down because I can beat Trump and I'm the only one who can. That's what he's got to do. That's what he's got to do. And, that's a situation where he can say my friend Joe all he wants.
Yeah, I think
because he's turning it around.
It was it Minsky she made a plea to Bernie like a couple days ago on her live stream of like, Bernie, like, you got to take the gloves off. Not like we're asking you to do an about face on your character, but if the hope and the future of this country is at stake, it doesn't really matter who your friend. I mean, you're talking about the future of this country. You're talking about human lives in Palestine. You're talking about all these things. I would say your friendship takes second wheel to humanity. I mean, I understand where Bernie's coming from, but the problem with Bernie for me, and I love him, is he is very stubborn in his ways. So he's stuck with his message for 40 years, but he also at times, I think, doesn't maybe take in advice from people like Dave Surratt and some of these people, because he's afraid he's going to be villainized. But if you're the anti-establishment candidate, you just have to embrace it.
You have to embrace it because, I mean,
they're going to hate you no matter what you do in life. No matter what.
That's the thing. Whenever he gives, whenever he does the genuflecting at the altar of Russiagate, whenever he does the unity talk, whenever he does the my friend Joe, I think Joe, it's like, Bernie, a lot of that, like that crowd that you're kind of pandering to, they're going to hate you no matter what.
Yeah.
They're going to hate you no matter what. And some of them, if you are the nominee, some of them still won't vote for you.
They're going to vote for
Trump. Some of them will vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Some of them will still vote for you anyway. So you got to just let that go. And instead, focus on the people who aren't going to get off the couch. Focus on the people who are undecided, the people who don't really feel like they have an option. Prove to those people you're the true outsider, because he's been doing that. That's something he's good at. That's something he's good at. That's something Tulsi Gabbard's good at. You do that, then you can beat Trump in a general. And you know what? I'm sorry. It's not an attack on character to make the very obvious observation that Joe Biden does not have the mental acumen. I don't know if he has dementia or what it is. I'm not a doctor, but he's definitely not all there, and that's putting it gently. And he would get eaten alive by Trump. And quite frankly, I don't give two shits about his feelings, because his feelings aren't going to save the freaking climate.
No.
So he's not competent enough to run. Nobody loves him enough in his circle to tell him that and to get him to step down. So Bernie has to on Sunday. Bernie has to take the gloves off and deliver that message.
Favors have already been handed out. I'm sure Clyburn's going to get something big for what he did, and all these other people are ready to get their piece of Joe Biden. And it's going to be like the old dynasty stories of like the completely senile out of it, even like a Claudius from Rome who's completely incapable, and it's the people around him that are really running the show because he's completely senile and he has no real, he's just going to be a literal figure of the state. He's going to have real, they're not going to let a guy like that fucking make decisions. He's going to have people around him making all his decisions.
So imagine any kind of executive order he might have to give. Imagine some kind of pandemic where he would have to give some kind of executive order. I mean, it's...
Who's he going to turn to? The health insurance lobbyist in his campaign and all these other people that he's giving.
And Comcast.
Comcast. And you know what? I don't like, we don't even need to preface that we don't like Trump, but Bernie could learn one thing from that campaign, which is not the fear mongering, but the exposing the failed political system. He should be exposing the Democratic Party and not even attempting to try to play by their rules. And a person like Trump, who is despicable, did that and still managed to win the Republican. He won. I mean, he won doing that. Even because
we're in an outsider era.
Yeah,
in Trump, he's not the only way Trump's an outsider is because instead of being the politician being bought, most of his life he was the person doing the buying. Yep. That's the only way he's an outsider. Well, so he's not an outsider at all. No. But he was able to speak the language and people bought into it. So Bernie, someone who is an actual political outsider who, while he has been in politics for a long, long time, he has always operated as an outsider. He hasn't even been in the Democratic Party. So it's like, you really got to embrace that and be that guy, Bernie, because that's what got you to this point. But
that's what people love about him. That's what people like about him. If we wanted another run-of-the-mill sort of like I just hope Bernie realizes, I hope he's sitting in his apartment or his house right now thinking tomorrow is a debate that could change the course of society as we know it. It's not another political debate. It's everything. And you may have to just be a warrior, dude. Be the warrior that we've, donated to and pushed, and many of us lost family members supporting that we have like had the
Yeah.
backup. And I think that you need to listen to your surrogates, and you got to, this is politics. Joe Biden's not out there saying Bernie's a good friend of mine. I haven't been hearing him say that too much.
No,
He's
he doesn't.
trashing him constantly.
He trashes him constantly, and he lies about his healthcare plan.
The moral high ground is
constantly
not
lies
going
about
to save any lives.
Yeah.
The moral high ground. But yeah, no, that's something I'm looking forward to seeing tomorrow. The great part about it for Bernie is everybody's stuck in the house. The NBA and all that stuff's canceled. Eyes are going to be on that debate. A lot of people are going to be watching that debate. There's no excuse not to. You're stuck at home. It should be a bloodbath. Bernie should make it a bloodbath. That's what I truly.
He's got to. He's got to. It's our only chance. But let's get back to China, man.
Yeah.
So let's get back. So you're in China. This starts happening. So tell me, what went down, man? Because I know when we hung out, and you were originally hoping you were going to have a nice vacation in China and talk to some people and document some stuff. And all of a sudden, coronavirus starts happening. You're there. What happened next?
So I would say like a week after China kind of was talking about it more in their media and stuff like that, I was trying my best to kind of remain calm about it. But, they've been through SARS, so there's an immediate fear there. And then they're hearing it's going to be worse than SARS. And then you're hearing the government knew about it for several months. There was a little bit of panic, more on the elderly side of things. But I'll just tell you how quick everything changed. It was like I was out filming with my camcorder beforehand, and it was totally fine. It was very, very relaxed. And then I went with my wife to her grandparents' house. They live in an older part of the city I was in the city's called Foshen, but they live in a more, I wouldn't say it's in a bad area, but it's a little more different kind of part of the city than I was in. And people, some of those houses are from, 1930s. It's a very old part of the city. And I was there, and I can't communicate with her grandparents. So I said, can I take my camcorder out and film around the area? So I started wandering around. And this is when I realized things were changing, is I was getting a much different reaction filming. Now, that was one, probably where I was, but two, you have a Westerner with a giant camcorder right after a potential pandemic is announced. Next thing I know, some guy on a motorcycle is yelling at me. And at this point, everybody's wearing a mask. I mean, it was like overnight. I didn't see a mask really when I got there. And then suddenly it's all I saw. People on motorcycles with their kid on the back. They're all masked up. And people started yelling at me for filming. And then there was a handyman paid by the government to clean the street. And he came over, and I thought he was going to stop it. And then he started yelling at me. So, I was getting a little bit nervous.
Do you know what they were saying?
No idea. I know my grandfather showed up on a bike and basically rescued me. I felt more or less from the situation, but and there was cops around. Like I started to get nervous for the first time, and that's when I think the gravity hit me personally. But then it was like I went to the mall. They live right near a mall. Took my camcorder. I said I'm going to go to the mall, and now there's a guy at the door who's scanning people every time they go in on the forehead. And I saw people getting rejected, and like this woman begging this guard that her husband was out drinking all night. He doesn't have corona, and he's like, no, you can't come in. And in the mall was haunting. It was completely barren, like nothing. It was eerie, and there's like all the stores were shut down, and like it was just completely empty. And that was kind of strange. I mean, it's just those little things. I mean, I'm in one of the most populated countries in the world, if not the most, 1.3 billion people. I'm in a big city, and the big mall is just desolate, dreary. So, just some of the things I filmed. And I think I don't want anybody to think I filmed a sort of revolution televised, like above view of like the corona, giving you all the info you need. What it was more was closer to the last documentary I did, where I was really trying to humanize the people in China who I felt when this started to happen were not humanized, just from friends back home and some of the stuff they were saying. It was like, oh, look at those people. That's crazy. I just hope it doesn't come here, kind of, very Western perspective, a very like survival of the fittest perspective. But when I was there, what I saw is exactly what I'm seeing now. So I feel like I got like the preview of it, because it's like the same cycle. There's like initial panic. There's everybody rushing to the grocery stores and Walmarts, and like everything's just, gone from the shelves, and every business getting closed down. And the big problem for me, the big thing that worried me wasn't the virus, which was bad, but the mortality rate was low at the time in China. It was the economic strife. I knew people there that just couldn't work for 3 weeks or a month. And I'm watching them getting incredibly stressed, wondering how they're going to make ends meet. And that was scary for me, because I started thinking about, man, if that happened in LA,
Oh
What
yeah.
the fuck would you do? Like, God, if I couldn't work for 3 weeks in LA, what would I do? I mean, I'd be out on the street. And in a capitalist society, at that time, I was wondering, would they be doing what China was doing, where they mandated that landlords had to then take it easy on their tenants? That was sort of a nationwide thing that was sort of
That
put out.
won't happen here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that won't. I mean,
Exactly.
you look at all the nurturing things other nations have done. China, Italy. Like taking it easy on rent, taking it easy on mortgages, giving work relief to people. I don't see any of that happening here. If anything remotely close to that happens here, I'll be surprised. I'm
Me
not
too.
expecting it. I mean, this is a huge message that our federal government is failing us on every level and actively works against us. And we're on our own. We're not prepared for anything like this. I mean, when I was listening to Trump and he was saying all the nice things Walgreens and Target are going to do, I mean, this isn't, I think it's almost generous at this point to call this a country. It's a we live in a corporation. We just live in a corporation. It's just a giant corporation.
It's a
Not
corporation.
really a country.
It's a war machine too, and it's just amazing because you think all the money we spend on military and weaponry to do imperialism and colonialism all over the globe, and what does that do in a situation like this? What does that really do? Sure, America's had this reputation now. Oh, you don't want to mess with America; they'll decimate you from the globe and destabilize your whole country and take your oil. But what does that do when you're in a situation like this? And it also, in a situation like a pandemic, I think world cooperation is very important, but we end up in a sort of prisoner's dilemma now where like nobody really trusts us. And because of what we've done, we don't really trust anyone else. So we aren't out there working with China, who's helping Italy and things like that. You know what I mean? Like we're not really having that world cooperation. More or less, America's starting to look a little bit like the outsider and, probably respectively or understandably so. And America, when I was in China, I just couldn't stop thinking how vulnerable they'd be if this thing they're pointing at comes their way. And here we are now. What do we do about the economy? What do we do about healthcare? Most people aren't going to pay a fucking copay or deductible to go get checked for the coronavirus. So they're just not going to do that. And again, like the disorganization of everything and every state having its own, again, like I'm not a fan of authoritarianism, but sometimes you just need action. And in this society where, like you said, it's a corporation and everybody's being paid off by somebody else, we don't get action. We get bickering, we get sound bites, we get, nothing.
So going back to China, how long did it take then until you were tested? Like when were you tested?
I was not tested.
Oh, you weren't?
I was not tested. It was what it was everywhere you went, you got scanned. And though that the scanner didn't say, you have corona, but if you don't have a fever, you could then be a symptomless carrier. But with people like that, it was difficult. At that time, they didn't really have a lot of testing going on. I think they've gotten that under control now, but this was just the earliness of it. But what I started to see too was like, we went out less and less and less. And then it was like 7 people stuck in a house all day. Like I was not supposed to go out at all. I would get my camcorder and go out sometimes. You had to have a mask on. I got yelled at for not having a mask on. And I got more and more nervous to film as things went on. I felt the surveillance state element of it a bit more as time went on, as we realized it was like a real global crisis. And the thing is too, like, it was weird because the Chinese people are incredibly like resilient people. I mean, they've been through a lot. So I would go outside and see like 7 kids with masks on, just like in the middle of an intense basketball game. I mean, like it's kind of like surreal, like a bunch of kids at the park flying kites, like little kids with these big masks on. And it was amazing. It was kind of beautiful to see that kind of harmony because I pictured back home more like the movies you see with like a Contagion or something where everybody's like running over each other, and there was like almost like a. It's going to sound weird, like a post-apocalyptic zen to the whole thing.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? People weren't barreling over people as much.
Post-apocalyptic zen would be a cool album too.
Yeah, right.
I mean, more an album name than a band name, I feel like, but I like it. Or maybe that's got to be this documentary.
It was a word I thought of throughout. And I had a guy making musical tracks while I was in China. Like I sent him money and was like, start making tracks now. I'm filming a lot of interesting things. And this movie might end up being a 20-minute sort of short film fever dream of sequences of like Chinese people in the grocery store during it and stuff like that. It's not going to be, like I said, like a worldview revolution televised, but I think it will really humanize that we're not that different. And I've been trying to stress this to a lot of people I'm friends with, is we're not that different from other people as far as we're all human beings. And we should all want to see everybody do okay. And these little differences of culture, and those are a benefit and a beautiful thing, the difference in spirituality and approaches, they can be. But, so many people I knew was just already thinking about their own family, and there was almost no sympathy to the people in China. And when I talked to the people in China about that, it just really crystallized America's reputation. There was no surprise at all. They didn't give a shit, didn't give two shits about it, and and that there was sort of a pointing and it wasn't pointing and laughing, but it was like, man, that sucks. God, I wouldn't come here, but not like, man, that sucks. Those people are not going to be able to work. I mean, think of the ditch diggers in China who are like really poor. I wasn't with people that were that poor who just couldn't work, probably maybe couldn't eat. I mean, there's people in China that, so, but to go back to what I saw, I wish I could say I saw anything crazy, but I saw, what I will say is my family grew obsessed with watching pandemic horror films through all of this while we were stuck in the house. So we're watching like Contagion. It was like horrifying, I'm like wearing my mask, watching.
I mean, they love. I mean, they love their horror over there. I mean, they make some, in Japan, China, even I believe like South Korea too. Yeah. They got a lot of. I mean, they make a lot of horror there, and they really do it great.
Yeah, they do. They do.
They make fantastic horror. Every time I'm in a subway station. And I'm sure you've probably seen this film, and I won't give anything away for anyone out there watching this that hasn't. But every time I'm in a subway station, I think of the movie Suicide Club.
Oh, you've seen that? Oh,
of course I've seen that.
A lot of people haven't seen that movie.
They should. It's freaking brilliant, and I never cannot think of that film whenever I'm like for the rest of my life. Whenever I'm in a subway station, I will think of Suicide Club because of that very poignant moment. We're not going to go into detail about to spoil it for anyone, but that very poignant scene in that film, among others. Oh man, now I gotta. We're gonna. That's actually, you know what? I've been married for a couple days now, and one of the things.
Congratulations.
Thanks, buddy. But one of the things I got to do is I really gotta. I gotta turn my wife on to some more Asian horror. Because these are conversations we've had. She's not seen as much of it. So I think Suicide Club's got to be added to the queue. Maybe tonight. Who knows?
Are you thinking of like, because Asian horror films can be so brutal. I remember my wife played one for me, like one of our first dates. I forget. I think it was called Dream House or something. And I remember somebody got stabbed in the neck and a sort of like a vacuum, one of those vacuum sealers got like shoved in the wound and like sucked it. I mean, I was like kind of horrified. Even with my taste, I was like, so are you gonna like ease it on her? Or are you gonna just throw her right into something like Suicide Squad? What's her experience with films like that? And
well, I mean, I don't think she's not huge on horror. Like she doesn't dislike it, but she hasn't really seen. My take with a lot of the Asian horror is yes, it can be very graphic, but it's not gore for gore's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you see these slasher films in the US and stuff like that. And even in other countries, I mean, some of the Italian slasher films and stuff, sometimes it's just like, just blood and guts for blood and guts sake. They don't go that route. It's all very it looks, first of all, incredibly real. And it's all very much pertaining to the story. So I totally think like a Suicide Club or I'll tell you a movie that I know she will love a lot when she sees it is Battle Royale.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I feel like those are some of the ones to ease somebody into, like Battle Royale, Suicide Club.
Because, like you said, there's this whole other element, and the gore or the violence, is very much working in sync with the themes of the actual story. You know what I mean? Battle Royale, especially, and they even taking some aim at society in China, and they do it in a way that or in Japan. I mean, it's harder in China because of their censorship. It's pretty tricky, but they take they watch a lot of things from Japan and Korea. But yeah, I mean. That culture in itself is interesting, and then when you start attacking those themes from like a fantastical horror, there's a lot to be done there, and I think that's why they're so different. Speaking of, and we will go back to the Corona. Did you watch Parasite? Did you get to watch it?
No, I've not. I need to see it.
It's a good one.
I need to see it. We recently, I mean, because the reality is you are going to be watching a little more. You're going to be consuming a little more content. We started The Outsider on HBO.
I heard it's really good. I haven't seen it.
So far, I've been liking it. When it comes to Stephen King, and this probably is not a popular opinion, but when it comes to Stephen King, I mean, obviously he's a brilliant storyteller. Look at what he's accomplished. But I feel like sometimes he'll take the easy way out in the end. I think that's the only way you can accomplish the volume that he's accomplished. And I'm worried that this might be going in that direction. I'm not sure yet because I'm midway through it, and no spoilers, please. But I'm worried it might be going in that where they're going to take the easy way out with the end instead of it being like a big mystery. We're going to solve this. It's going to be, the easy way out. So we'll see. But I am still enjoying it regardless. So.
I have not seen it. I won't spoil because I actually don't even know much about it. But I've read most of Stephen King's early work, and he's always had an issue with endings. I mean, you look at like Needful Things was like this great anti-capitalism like horror story that was kind of funny, and at the end it gets real insane. It just ends on like magic tricks, and there's a lot of that shit. Even in it kind of ends on like magic being this thing. And it's like his horror was so good, I thought, because it hit so close to home in this sort of white picket fence suburbia where everything's supposed to be perfect, and there's such horrifying things under the surface. Not just like fantastical, but if you've read some of his stuff, there's like homophobia and there's a lot of stuff and abuse. But then when it gets to magic all the time, and a lot of the end of his stories or it falls into that, it's like, but that was the exact thing that wasn't the part of the story that was so creepy. A lot of times it was all
it's the fact that there's a couple layers beneath your suburban life, and that's what I think connected a lot of us with his imagery, especially when you're like a younger kid. You're kind of, if you're living in like suburban whatever, in my case it was suburban Pittsburgh, you're kind of looking for something fascinating, and you like the idea that there's something a little bit beneath the surface, so yeah.
Absolutely. But you know what I will do? I'll finish the China story because there was an interesting ending to that, which is that we noticed our flight got canceled.
Okay.
And we started getting so Nightcrawlers was coming out at the end of that month.
Which is your movie for anyone who's just tuning in late. Kevin Ronca, filmmaker, did Revolution Televised and Nightcrawlers, which we're going to talk more about Nightcrawlers soon. Yes, we will. And so we worked on that movie for 2.5 years. So this release date was like set in stone. It was like it was going to go on Amazon. It was going to go on all these streaming sites, and I had to like roll out teasers. And we were a small team that we do all that ourselves. So I had to get back as much as I didn't want to cut the trip short. But when our flight got canceled, we started realizing it was getting a lot harder to get out of there. And I started to get a little nervous, like I can't get stuck in China. I just can't right now. So we booked the last flight out of the region we were in. Like if you didn't get that flight, you were out. Wow. And the day before the flight was supposed to leave, and it was maybe 2 days before, I had at this point about 3 hours of footage. And I was like, man, I can't believe I was on ground zero and got to film this. But how hard is it going to be to get these tapes out of here? And again, it's this huge camcorder. But I just still didn't really have an ending to the film. And my wife was going to go say bye to her grandparents. And I said, I'll come along. And I brought my camcorder. And just granted, when I told you the earlier story where I was getting yelled at, that was the beginning of all of it. But just to see sort of where it went, and this is only in a couple of weeks, when I got there this next time to see her grandparents, there was a literal like big blockade up. It looked like it really looked like a dystopian, a post-apocalyptic film. And there was police officers there. There was a little health tent set up. I had to give them my passport just to get in to visit. And I wanted to film it so bad. But there's police officers there. And it was the first time I got like really legitimately scared and was like, this could be a great ending to the film. But I didn't bring my camera out. And lo and behold, while I'm at the desk giving my passport, I'm just being filmed by everybody else, like this Westerner and white man in the middle of all this. Everyone's got their iPhones out and they're just filming me. And I was like, I could have totally filmed this sort of experience, and I didn't. Did you ask someone for their footage?
No, I didn't. It was
you're like, hey man, I could use this for a thing. Can you drop box this to me?
I should have. I should have. And the cops were filming a little bit too. And I'm like, man,
could ask them. Be like, hey guys, I don't know. No, they would not have given you.
No, but that's exactly what I stared at. I'm like, this is bullshit. Like they can all sit in a circle around me and film me with their iPhones, and I can't. But it was part of the problem was my camera was like this fucking. Excuse my language, this space age camcorder thing. It's just this huge thing. And it looked a little bit, I think, intimidating to people, even though in reality it was like this grungy VHS quality type thing. But I think they thought I was like a reporter. But when I got through, man, that was eerie. Like this whole block of the city was just like nothingness. The only thing I saw was like a dog come out of an alleyway that looked like it hadn't eaten in like a week. It was like,
wow, dude, that's crazy.
It's surreal. Whenever you're in China, because when I come for the Chinese New Year, it's usually very quiet in the city because everybody flies to see their family.
Mm,
So it's usually like that, but this was just a little different. This was
right.
like not everybody on vacation. This was like everybody's either inside or like hiding from this sort of experience. And it was a little dark. And then when I was leaving I filmed on the way out of the barricade, and they just were smiling and waving at me with their masks on. It was like it really wasn't as big of a deal as I thought. But my last day filming,
Well, maybe that can be your ending, the smiling and the waving.
I was thinking that. I was thinking like I just had to get this final shot, and then the last day I wanted to get another shot of like a park that was now empty, my flight was in like 2 hours, and her dad said like if you're gonna go get that shot, you better move. So I go out, I forget my mask, which you legally have to have. I have this big camera in my hand. I'm filming the park, and at this point, it's such a difference to when I first started filming. Is people are getting really creeped out and irritated, and they're just walking away, and they're just treating me like I'm actually being treated like a total outsider. And then I see these two police golf carts, more or less, and I have no mask on. I have this big camera in my hand. I'm like the only American in this whole vicinity, and that's actually where the surveillance stuff. I got like really scared. And I just actually got the shot real quick, and I ran and I got out of there. And when I got to the airport, this is the crazy ending to it. I have my beanie on, I have my jacket on, and I have all my luggage. And I'm like, I got to get on this flight. We got to get back. Starting to worry something might happen. And when I walked through the door of the airport, because I'm sweating carrying all this stuff, I set off an alarm because the doorways are sort of heat. They can read your heat and your body temperature. So I walked through the door of the airport, and a guard sort of person steps up with a mask on and says, you have to get out of line. And then they scan my forehead. And I'm like, I've been getting scanned all month. Like, I'm fine. But with this time when they scan my forehead, there's a beep, 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 and it turns red. And they tell me I have to leave the airport. So you can't get on the flight.
Why did you have to leave the airport?
They told me your temperature's too high by like a degree. And my wife, so the rest of my family.
Did you have an actual temperature, or was it just like you were like 99 because of all the stress?
It was like just above to be in that, and they were being so cautious. I'm watching my family like move into the airport and me being left behind, and I started getting super nervous. And my wife gets out of line, and she tells the lady like, "Look, he's sweating, he's stupid, he's wearing his beanie in the summer, he doesn't want to carry all this stuff. Like, let him, go outside and try it again." She said, "Okay, we'll give it one more shot." I go out, and I'm telling you, at this point, I'm so panicked. I'm starting to wonder if I have the coronavirus. I'm like,
right.
I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah,
my
dude.
heart
You're
is
probably,
thundering. I'm
yeah.
like, what? And her dad's saying, well, if you do, you'll have to go back to our house and fight the fever for 2 weeks, and then you'll be in a database here that you have it, and then it'll be like a few months before you can get back. I mean, I'm like really freaking out at this point, and it is not helping my sweating or my temperature.
Yeah, no kidding.
When I have the mask on, which is already kind of uncomfortable if you're not used to it. In the end, I went out, I smoked a cigarette, I calmed down, I went through, and it worked out, and I got on that flight and was like, I was about to be stuck.
That is insane.
Yeah, that was something. But I had built up because I was shooting on tape that it's VHS, so you only have 30 minutes per tape. And if you don't like something, you have to record over it. So you're really limited on what you can shoot. So there was a lot of times where I'm like, oh, I wish I had that, or I probably shouldn't have wasted on this. But I was saving 10 minutes for the US airport because I heard that was going to be real crazy. It wasn't. And maybe that's a weakness of Trump is I walked in, it was a small line, walked up, got scanned, and they were like, all right, here's your 2 weeks of self-quarantine instruction, go. And the custom line was the smallest I've ever seen in my life. We went like,
interesting.
It was like, we went right through, we were questioned for 5 minutes, and I was outside waiting for my ride.
So when they were scanning people, they were basically just saying like, if you don't have a fever and you're just like a healthy person or whatever, that's just that.
Yup. And then I was told go buy a thermometer and stay in your house and for 2 weeks, and you have a little chart, and it was real crappily, but it looked like something you get handed out in middle school. It was just like, write down your temperature. And I don't even know who's going to read this thing. And, yeah, it was interesting. And, the flight too was interesting. Like we had no movies, no earphones because of this whole thing. So like, 15 and a half hour flight, you could just do nothing. And everybody's just wearing masks and everybody's nervous. Every time someone coughs, there's like, this paranoia.
Oh yeah. It's, I mean, I get nervous whenever I do anything now. Like I'm just sort of just like, oh man, is this, and it's March, dude. I get allergies this time of year, like clockwork. It's not, I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but at one point I muted my microphone because I had a sniffle real quick because my cat is right here. And, like I'm getting, but anyway. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, but I take my temperature every day just as a precautionary, because the thing, if you're under 60 and you're not immune system suppressed, like you don't have a suppressed immune system, the scarier thing in regards to you getting it isn't so much the illness that you have. Of course, that's inconvenient. No one likes getting sick. But the even scarier thing would be if you don't really know you have it because your symptoms are so mild, and then you give it to somebody who's more vulnerable, somebody who's over 60 or has a suppressed immune system, that's the scariest thing.
No, it's absolutely right. People like us are the ones that we're not at risk ourselves. We're a risk to others. We become dangerous or even deadly to an elderly person. And that is a really scary thing, I think, to think about. And that's why I was pretty precautious going out. I would say towards the end of my self-quarantine, I wore the mask a little less than maybe I should have. I tried to be really good about it, but in general, that was my major concern. Was always never for myself. It was always for the people around me. Even when I was in China, I didn't even worry as much for myself because the mortality rate, even in children, from what I've read, maybe I'm wrong about this, it's not like SARS where you're seeing a lot of infant mortality. Maybe there's some, but it's much higher in elderly people. And it's really targeting like that specific region. I haven't heard as much about kids.
Well, I've heard mostly kids aren't really getting it much.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there was a case, and this is all, we all see so many freaking headlines that it's tough to, but apparently there was like some 3-year-old somewhere that might have actually been here in the States, but I think they're doing okay now. But yeah, there's so much information going a mile a minute, and you really got to filter it because there's just so much out there. Look at you touching your face.
I know. Hold on one second. Can I just give me 1 second here?
You take a second. I mean, you realize how much
glare. There's this big glare hitting my face that it's like this blinding light. It looks almost like
and it's like it's just all up against your face, and then your face is going, touch me, Kevin. Touch me on camera.
Okay.
You realize how much you do it. Like I realize how much I do touch my face, how often I'll itch my face. I'll realize how often I realize even this morning I was taking some crud out of my eyes. I'm like, oh, should I still be doing this? But I washed my hands first. I washed my hands, then I got the crud out, then I washed my hands again. So I don't know.
No, that's the one thing. My mom's a nurse, and she actually
I scratched my nose too.
Well, we all do that, but she took a CDC, there was a course offered for free at her hospital, and she got a lot of that info that was really good information, and a lot of what she said was washing of the hands. Hate to say it, but the really compulsive people might be doing the best on this in that regard, because that is the best thing you can really be doing. One of them is to just, unfortunately, keep washing your hands as much as you can. And I mean, because they're saying it could be up to several days where it could be on something like a doorknob. I mean, that's pretty freaky. I mean, you touch that, you touch your face 20 times. The same stuff they were talking about in the movie Contagion, which I had never really seen, and then I watched it. Obviously, I watched it with my family when I was in China, and that was freaking me out watching that movie. They were saying the same thing. They're like, yeah, we touch our face 30 times every couple minutes. Most people don't realize they're doing it. Us just spreading this whole thing around.
I'm pretty neurotic about washing my hands. I'm pretty good with it. So I've been good in that regard. What I've been realizing about myself just as a human is it's we all wonder how introverted or extroverted are we? And I've always made the joke that I feel like I'm the I'm the introvert's extrovert. I'm kind of I'm relatively outgoing, but I also really value my alone time, and the idea of a night indoors with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and it's just me alone with a script I'm trying to write. That's not a bad night to me. That's actually a very pleasant evening. And whenever I get one of those, I actually really appreciate it, and it's real productive. On the same note, I'm a performer. I perform live all the time. So I feel like I'm right there, but
that's interesting. And yeah, well, I guess the one side he's going to not really mind this sort of bunker style living that may be happening the next couple of months, where we're basically in a siege where you're going to be in your house a lot. But the performer side, my heart really goes out to you, people work in the food industry, people whose job is a face-to-face kind of thing. Did you see the NBA player was did you hear that story about the NBA player who was sort of licking microphone? No, he was touching microphones and making a joke of Corona at a press conference, and then he got it.
I heard about that. Yeah, I didn't realize that was the person who got it, but yeah, I did hear something about that. I'm realizing I'm less of an introvert than I thought, though, because it's only been a couple days, and I'm already I want to go out. I'm supposed to be doing a show in Miami right now, and I'm not, and that really bumps me out. And I really I'm hoping we don't have to cancel any more tour dates. I mean, we're taking it one day at a time, just like everyone else. But, you know, I'm hoping, I mean, you know, we're always under 250 people as far as the venues we play. So we're okay there. But, you know, a lot of people are just canceling everything. So
yeah, Graham hit me up about that, and I felt bad because I was like talking to my wife. I'm like, I don't know what to tell them, because like at one hand, right now with everything going on, there's probably nothing more needed than like a progressive comedy tour. You know, with what's going on with the politics, like this is like the time to get the people out there and make, you know, you guys make people feel a lot better. And feel like there's someone to turn to. And then on the other hand, you know, I didn't want you guys to get stuck in Florida because I told you like, oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, just go down there. But, you know, so I think you made the right move.
I think we did. I mean, it hurt. It was a bummer. I mean, it's such a bummer. And I know that, you know, the ticket holders were really bummed out. We're really bummed out. But, you know, I do think it was the right thing to do as far as for everyone's safety and just with everything that's going on down there. So, but and we're rescheduling. I mean, we should, you know, hopefully everything kind of just goes back to some normalcy sooner than later, and we are rescheduling everything. But yeah, man. So let's get into the movie now. I want to jump into the movie. Sure. What is going on with Nightcrawlers? And well, first of all, let's start at the beginning. Give everyone a synopsis of what Nightcrawlers is all about, and then let's go into what happened with you and Amazon.
Yes, this is a good. So I don't know who's watching, who maybe nobody's familiar with Revolution Televised. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not familiar with Nightcrawlers. But just to give background, it was a move in a different direction. So Revolution Televised was about the DNC, and it was a very standard documentary as far as narration and these, you know, the things we usually see in a documentary. And it was about, you know, the DNC. When Donald Trump won the presidency, we as a group, we felt we were at a crossroads. We can keep making like overtly political work, like we can make more documentaries about and then, you know, and a lot of people who are supporting us wanted us to go in that direction. But at the end of the day, we're all filmmakers. Like, we're at our heart, like we have progressive values, but we believe there's a power to make films that aren't as direct about that kind of stuff, that can still have that power, empowerment and opening people's eyes and having people, you know, comprehensively think about life and issues. So we figured we would go the total opposite route of the Revolution Televised and see if it had the same appeal, the same progressive people wanted to watch it, but also reach across to other people and find an issue that affects kind of everybody. And we always wanted to do something about addiction and about homelessness, but it just kind of sprung on us. We had a meeting at sort of when the Revolution Televised stuff died down, and sort of like a what's next kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, what do we do next? And a guy who's not even in the group anymore had put this trailer on, and it was just a bunch of street footage on a camcorder, but it was like people shooting up, it was people overdosing, it was people living in poverty, it was prostitution, and I was like, this shit looks pretty wild. And this is very far from what we had just done, and it was intoxicating. So the way
how many of you are there with Right Brain Studios? Like, how many of you are there?
We're down to 5.
Okay, that's actually, I mean, that's a lot. Actually, that's pretty good.
So? Yeah, it was. And it's kind of become a fluid thing. So we have people too that will just jump on the projects that we don't maybe say like, oh, it was never meant to be like you have to be in this sort of organization. It's just like if these people work on a project, we just call it a Right Brain project, and we kind of try to keep the group together. And we have graphic people that will jump on it, but they are also doing other things. But when that sort of center of orbit is around a project, then we'll brand it as that. And so with this, somebody who's not really as much a part of the group anymore, when he put this trailer on, I was mesmerized. I didn't know what it was, and it had 2013 date on it, so I guess it was like 5 years since it had, you know, never came out or anything. And so I said, I want to go all in on it. I think some people were a little bit like that. You want to go all in on this minute trailer of just a bunch of grainy camcorder footage of the streets, and other people in the group are like, yeah, this looks crazy. Let's kind of follow what it is. And I actually, I'm touching my face again. I called around and found the filmmaker, and he was living in a homeless shelter. And had given up on the film, was like on the brink of just burning all this footage he had, which it turned out to be about 80 hours of footage. He had filmed for basically 2011 all the way up to about 2016.
Yeah, and when I had you on the show before, you kind of told this story. So this person was a homeless person themselves.
They were
documenting life on the streets.
Yeah, so basically he got a camcorder 2011, shot this, you know, decided to make a documentary after high school. And he wanted to film the grittiness of homelessness and addiction in Boston, which is huge. And it was during the Obama years, so I felt that still tied into what we were doing before, as you kind of saw the total crumbling of what was really happening in that sort of time period. It's right there during Obama's presidency. Not right when it starts. By the time, the Occupy movement's in the film, he's almost like Forrest Gump, where he does catch a lot of important things that were kind of happening, with the Boston Marathon bombing, for instance. But basically, as the film goes on, he falls into becoming a heroin addict. So he's making this movie about addiction and becomes the addict. And by the end of the film, he's completely off the rails, and he's not even filming himself anymore because he can't. He's living under a bridge. It's amazing to see somebody starting from high school, very innocent. We have footage of him literally senior year, not using drugs, and just seeing how anybody could actually fall down this path. And at the end of the film, you barely recognize him. He's under a bridge. He looks very haggard, and you just almost think it's a different human being. And the hope of the film was that you could humanize addiction by actually starting a person, because it's camcorder, in the POV of a fresh-faced high school kind of rebellious kid, artistic, and show that even this guy you'd never guess could end up in that path, and it's not actually that far off. Because I think some people are like, how could anybody put a needle in their arm? How could anybody drink all this alcohol and end up in the emergency room? And you don't realize how it's a couple wrong moves that get you in that spot. It's not like an overnight. It is a couple.
Oh, totally, man. And when you meet people, especially people that have struggled with addiction and have gone on to do very amazing things. There's a writer friend of mine named Lyon. He wrote a novel called Wasted Talent, and he's actually doing a lot of stuff on YouTube now. They'll just tell you, they'll be like, yeah, I was just a normal guy, and then I thought, what's one time gonna do? And then before you know it, you're getting involved with all kinds of stuff, and it's tough.
Yeah, and a lot of people too miss that it's not usually like someone's like, yeah, I'm just gonna do heroin today. It's like, a lot of times it's the prescription, with Big Pharma, there's a prescription sort of pipeline to heroin where sometimes you start in your own medicine cabinet, or a friend passes you a painkiller or a Percocet, and it's a 10 milligram or a 5 milligram, something your dentist would give you. And, it starts with that. And then the habit gets to the point where instead of paying $1 per milligram, and maybe by then you're doing like 30 milligram painkillers to feel something, which is $30 a day, which is $200 a week. It's like, oh, I can get heroin for $5. And that's where that jump actually happens a lot with people, is it becomes like, well, I don't want to spend more, so I guess I'll just do heroin now. And that's usually the and it becomes almost like an economical decision, because they can't afford to pay for the pills. And so in general, this film, I think what I like about it is we've had people from both sides of the spectrum, because we make progressive films, but I also believe a lot of people, even people that consider themselves Republicans or they vote Republican, often don't realize that they have a lot more in common than they think with the working class of the left. And a lot of them are just, in my opinion, a little, obviously some of them are bigots and that, but not all of them are. And some of them, I think, have lost their way. And I think they end up moving into or being manipulated into joining this other side for the wrong reason. So this film, we've gotten a good reaction, I think, from all sides. And ironically, with the revolution televised too, a lot of people on the right liked it. I'm sure some of them were just liking to see that sort of destruction of the Democratic Party and then the rigging against Bernie. You meet people on the right who are sometimes sympathetic to that. But I do think it's a film that it has a political edge people kind of miss, that's sort of subtle because there's no voiceover. It just drops you right into this sort of found footage, like almost Blair Witch-esque kind of experience. You know what I mean?
So, yeah. So the film is out now.
It is.
And you guys had an issue with Amazon, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it was never going to be, and I think this is a misconception, it's never going to be like a Prime, like their series that they put out themselves that they make in-house. But what it was going to be was available for rent. And we've fought in censorship on this film, like even with a agent, a sales agent representing the film with a good reputation, even with some endorsements from some decent people. And even when we won some awards, we just won Queen Palm Film Festival for Best Documentary in the bronze category. We were at Denver Film Festival playing with like Earl Morris and the Dardenne brothers. I mean, some of the biggest documentary filmmakers ever. We actually played 3 times as much at that festival as Earl Morris's film. And just, we had won an award in Tennessee at a festival. So the film was definitely considered a piece of art. It wasn't like we were saying it was a piece of art. It was, there were Sundance programmers that had seen it and said, and we had gotten some good reviews. It was a serious film. But because of its crude camcorder style, I could see somebody maybe dismissing it. But what happened was with Amazon, we were kind of concerned because a lot of theaters didn't want to play it. There's a little bit of nudity in it. There's a little bit of violence, very minimal little bit of violence, but there's also some very intense addiction scenes. I mean, you're right in the room with heroin addicts, very casually shooting up, which is very knee-jerky for a lot of people. But you have to remember, if you're watching this film, the point is to understand that this is like a reality for people. It is certainly uncomfortable to see, but just imagine if that was your existence and you couldn't stop it. So, the film was planned to go on Amazon. You set the date ahead of time. You submit it for a review. And only in the last few months, because I'm sure you've seen on Amazon, there is some garbage on there, like garbage. Like if you go to like the
I'd imagine, man. I don't do Prime. I try to avoid Amazon to the best of my ability. You know, if there's something creative on there that I want to see, I will, you know, like see it, because I know that's not, you know, that's not Jeff Bezos doing necessarily. But yeah, I mean, I try to avoid it as much as I can.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, not the Prime even, but like if you go to like rent movies on Amazon, where they just have like a
Right.
You type any movie in the search, and we also, you know, I hate Amazon. I don't want anyone here to think I'm a hypocrite. It's like we've gotten to a point as progressive filmmakers that we've been so silenced, even going back to Revolution Televised, that like they're making it very difficult for us because we don't have the huge YouTube following. We've always kind of moved to the film, and thus we don't have as much control sometimes over our destiny. Like when the theaters won't let you play because it's too much or it's too real, even though it's doing very well in sort of a critical sense. And you're constantly told like there's no appeal for this movie, and they're just kind of shut you out. The idea of uploading it to Amazon was like, well, at least, you know, millions of people will have access to this story that is very important. But then the day it was supposed to publish, it's like we get this weird message that our agents who have handled 30, 40 documentaries, like we've never gotten this message. It was like, you're now under like an additional review. Like it, you know, it's like this arbitrary little message you get, doesn't tell you a lot, that you might have violated their content policy. And like, you know, there's movies on Amazon you can buy. Like one was called like, you know, the title of the film was like Weird Racist Exploitation. That was a movie, you know. I mean, it was like movies like a Serbian film that are more or less like torture porn. And I'm not here to say those movies aren't art. That's not my place to say. I'm saying, why can't we also be considered art? I'm not trying to take their right away. I'm saying we should be up there too with the rest of this kind of stuff. So we went under the policy, you know, you know, my agents say like, we've never seen this before. I'm sure it'll be fine. You know, this is a movie that's won some awards, it's taken seriously. And then it gets rejected. They said like, this is not going to be on our platform. It's just a real simple email. So we actually appealed. You can like appeal it. We listed the reviews about it, the articles about it, you know, and so some of the little stats about it, you know, it has done very well. The trailer alone had gotten, you know, 100,000 views in like one day. I mean, it has gotten, you know, people online have spoken out for it, and addicts, specifically the addict community, people who work in needle exchanges, people that have been addicts, people that are recovery coaches, and even nurses who deal with this epidemic have like gotten behind this movie. So we gave them all that information. The agent said, you know, we're a legitimate company. You know, we do a lot of work in this industry. And it went under a new review, and then it went under a third review. And then it was like, and then our supporters started emailing Amazon and complaining. And I don't know what happened, but then we finally got a message like this week. I think it was like a couple days ago. And it said like, look, it was pretty rude. It was like, look, we've had the whole team look at it. It's not coming on. It's not going to be on our platform.
Wow. And they still denied.
Yeah. Yep. And it was like a flat out.
And it's not like Amazon is making this. It's just a platform that, you know, I mean, like you said, Amazon, which I'm not a fan of, you're not a fan of, but, you know, whether we like it or not, a half of all online commerce goes through there. So You're just looking to have your film listed so more people know about it.
Yes, yeah,
and they're not letting it happen.
So for $3.99, they could just rent it. I mean, that was the only, you know, and so now there's only one website that has it for rental. And, you know, and immediately, I mean, Amazon literally destroyed the momentum of the film. I mean, we were putting teasers out every day. We had planned this date. We had all this merch, like things were, you know, and we were watching the engagement was going up again. And because it was like a very hot project on Reddit. Like on Reddit, it like exploded to like the front page when we had dropped the trailer, just randomly on there, it just exploded. And then there was a year of, you know, years of making it and going through the process, and momentum would go up and it would go down, and then we get in a festival. And so you want to release it with that, like the wind at your back, like you're like, boom, this is the top momentum. And when that Amazon stuff happened, I mean, dude, everything just halted. I mean, it was like, people started asking, like, where can I watch it? And everything just kind of froze, and it was really kind of terrifying. I mean, especially for Steven, who's really worked on the movie for 8 years. I mean, and then to finally get it to a point where it's being appreciated and winning an award and being in festivals, and then to have them say like, yeah, this isn't a film. This is too offensive to be put on our platform. We're not going to.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Like, that's
Yeah.
why these things need to be broken up and made into utilities.
Absolutely.
Because it's like Amazon, like, what gives them the right to just determine what is and isn't film content that's appropriate for people to see? Like, what gives them that right?
And you remember, I know you guys were going through it with the YouTube stuff. I know it used to be much easier to just kind of monetize and put things up, and it was almost this glory days. And then I heard now they're chasing the progressives out, and they're making it very hard for you guys to make money. And that was actually the interesting thing, was our agents had told us that the policy that we went through was actually kind of newer, and had we dropped this maybe like 6 months ago, we might not have had as much of a problem. But they're kind of doing what YouTube's doing now, which is just this big crackdown on anything they deem like not worthy or not of value, and this arbitrary system of deciding what should be censored. And it to me, it's a slap in the face to the millions of people who are suffering from addiction, who finally have a movie that a lot of the addict community actually has gotten behind. It's a slap in the face to 500,000 people sleeping on the streets. And we're told at every turn that the film, even through streaming sites that were kind of interested, but they're like, this film, we don't think it has a wide appeal because of the camcorder. And I completely dispel that myth, because we've played it in some underground theaters and we packed them out. When we played at the Defy Film Festival opening night, you couldn't get a seat. The sales have actually been pretty good on Vimeo. I mean, it's one of the better selling titles in the sort of catalog of my agents, and it's only been out for a week. It's been purchased in 10 different countries: Uruguay, Singapore, Australia. I don't like hearing it has no wide approach, because addiction is affecting everybody. And I think people get a little like thinking it's a very like, maybe it's an avant-garde artsy film when they first watch it, because they're not used to being in a camcorder POV with no narration in a documentary, right? But what actually is, I think, going to surprise people is how wide its appeal is, because a lot of what people watch right now on YouTube and Instagram are these short videos. There's no narration. They're just situational. It could be a fist fight. It could be something happening on the subway. And we quickly adapt to watching entertainment like that, where we don't need to be told what's going on. We know these situations, and we kind of catch on quickly. That's basically what Nightcrawlers is. It's almost also like a vlog before vlogs existed, because it was like 2011. It is just situational things that you just kind of get because you've either been there or you understand how humanity works. It almost takes film narrative to like a primal state of like everyday interactions. And I think that the film has a much larger appeal than people think if it was able to be put on a platform. So what we've decided, now that our release has been totally destroyed and botched, because we're fighters and we're not going to give up, is let's prove to the streaming sites and to Amazon, these people, that it does have a wide appeal. And that's by everybody going to Vimeo and renting it and telling people about it. And let's get those numbers up so we can start going to streaming sites and saying, look, 500 people watch this movie. Whether you think it's risky or not, the people have spoken. Kind of like what Bernie's trying to do, is like prove that there is this audience or this group of people that really want to see a change. And for us, the change isn't political in a sense as much as what we watch and how we consume entertainment. And maybe enough is enough with like, I like Netflix, but maybe enough is enough with the candy that you just eat it and you don't really pay attention to it, and the junk food of entertainment. Maybe we do start, breaking these barriers down of how we consume media and watch things that are uncomfortable. But
so where can people go to get the film now? Where's the best place for people to go?
So if you go to Vimeo, you go to vimeo.com/on-demand/Nightcrawlers, or you can just Google Vimeo on demand Nightcrawlers, and it'll pop up right away. And every $3.99 rental, it not only helps us, but it sends a message to Amazon and these gatekeepers and says, look, we do want entertainment that challenges us. We do want to see these things that you say are taboo, because they're only taboo because we make them taboo. And if we never have this conversation about addiction and homelessness and these things that are depressing, I don't know how we ever fix them,
Right. Well, so and there's also just so people know where to go, there's also a website for Nightcrawlers itself too.
Yes, nightcrawlersthefilm.com. And can Perfect. I do 1 second of shameless promotion here?
No, of course, man. Okay. I wanna direct people where to go. I want to make sure they know where they can get the film. So Vimeo on demand, you just type in, Nightcrawlers and Vimeo on demand in Google, or you can go to the, vimeo.com/on-demand/Nightcrawlers. Yeah, because I still need to watch it myself. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. I'm excited then. But if you're more into having a physical copy of something, or you believe in the sort of physicality of a release, we have these VHS tapes We have it on
Oh,
VHS.
dude.
Yeah, these.
That is OG. Wow.
And
I
what's
would,
cool,
man, that'd be a fun thing to have. I wouldn't have a way to play it, but
that's
that'd be
most
a
people's
fun.
problem, which is why we only made like 50 of them. They're sort of more of a
That's like a
promotional thing.
collector's thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and this
that's
thing
groovy.
actually flips out, so there's like a reversible cover on it, so you decide what cover you like better.
Do you guys sign them for people?
What we actually did was they're in bundles. We were almost out of the one bundle. They sold out almost in one weekend. There was 10 of them where each VHS came with like a lobby card, a pin, a poster, and then a personal item from Steven's journey was in there too. So there was like his tap dancing shoes when he used to panhandle. Somebody got all his journal entries from the
Oh,
asylum.
wow.
Somebody got his old cocaine sniffer from back in the day. It was like an old piece of paraphernalia. We had obviously cleaned it and everything, but just like, weird stuff. A book he got published in, his only copy of a cooking pilot he did for public access, just like weird stuff that people really felt connected to him, I think. And he's a big reason I think people like the film, is they feel a connection to him. A lot of addicts feel connected to him. He's very talented. He's very smart. And he kind of breaks the stigma of what we call an addict. I mean, they're some of the smartest people on the planet, maybe too smart for their own good sometimes. So yeah, we wanted to do something personal where people could buy the tape and feel like they really had a piece of Steven. So yeah, but you can go to nightcrawlersthefilm.com and there's the merch and everything. But if you want to watch the film, you'll have to go to Vimeo on demand. But every purchase is a middle finger to Amazon. It's $3.99. You get the film and you tell them, yeah, I do stand with this film. I do stand in solidarity with addicts and homeless people who want to have their story told, not from this Hollywood exploitive glory story redemption thing they sell you, like then the addict writes the best-selling novel, and like that's like it's always the same, or it just always feels very exploitive and from the outside. This is a film made by a heroin addict about heroin addiction,
Sure.
and he started when he wasn't a heroin addict. So you have these elements here of But yeah, I would love if your audience, if they were willing to give something different a shot, because it is a different experience, and it's a.
No, I can't wait to see it, man. I mean, I'm a fan of your filmmaking, and I can't wait to see this one. I know we've talked about it a couple times, and now I finally get to see it. So nightcrawlersthefilm.com, go there. Vimeo on demand, Nightcrawlers the film, and check it out. I can't wait to check it out. It'll be one of the upsides about the quarantine situation we all find ourselves in. We got some time to catch up on some content. So I'll be watching your film. Folks, this is Kevin Ronca, filmmaker with Right Brain Studios, who was in China when the coronavirus broke out. Shout out to Danny and Big Baby Zubaz. Danny, good stuff, Ron. Big Baby Zubaz, it's the one part in Idiocracy. The corporations run it all. Thank you guys very much for the super chat contribution. Kevin, again, that website, nightcrawlersthefilm.com. And Kevin, I look forward to collaborating with you soon. I know we're going to be working on some municipal broadband documentaries together, which I can't wait to break ground on that.
Yeah, when all this clears up and the dust settles, I can't wait. We'd love to start collaborating with people in the progressive scene. You guys are the real only media we have left. So yeah.
Right on, man. Well, have a good one. Stay safe, and we will be in touch.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Everyone, stay safe out there. We'll be back on because, we're all in this together. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.